and welcome to the 12th episode of RNV Talks, in which we will be talking about many different aspects of the history and culture of the Roma minority. This podcast is released as part of the project EUROMIJA, implemented by the Roma National Council of Croatia in the framework of the European Solidarity Corps. Let's see what the team has in store for us today.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the podcast. Today we're talking about something that honestly affects all of us in one way or another. Digital life, digital inclusion, and who gets left behind when everything moves online. Lately, it feels like literally everything is digital now. You need an app for banking, healthcare, public services, school, transportation. Even talking to institutions feels impossible sometimes without a password and 3 verification codes.
Yeah, sometimes I actually feel like I need a tutorial just to log into something.
Yeah, and then imagine how overwhelming that can feel for someone who didn't grow up surrounded by technology.
And that's really what today's conversation is about. We often hear politicians and companies talking about digital transformation, like it's automatically positive for everyone. But the reality is that not everybody benefits equally from this transition.
Especially communities that already face exclusion in other areas of life.
That's why today we're focusing specifically on older Roma people and digital inclusion. Because when services move online, people who already face poverty, discrimination, or lack of access can become even more isolated.
I think one of the biggest stereotypes is the idea that older people just don't understand technology. Like, people immediately assume, oh, they're old, of course they cannot use it.
Yeah, and honestly, I think society sometimes gives up on older people way too quickly.
Yeah, totally. And the thing is, many older people do want to learn. The issue is often that nobody takes the time to teach them properly, or the systems themselves are just poorly designed.
And some apps are confusing even for younger people. Tiny tags, complicated passwords, endless updates.
Also, not to forget that websites sometimes make you click through 10 different pages just to find some basic information.
Yes. And then when someone struggles, instead of saying, maybe this system is difficult, society says, oh, they're incapable. And for Roma communities, digital exclusion is usually much deeper than simply age. It's connected to poverty, discrimination, education gaps, unstable internet access, and social marginalization.
And also, a lot of older Roma adults may not have had the same education opportunities growing up either.
Or just access to technology during their working lives. I mean, if someone spent most of their life without computers being part of everyday life, suddenly being expected to do everything online is a massive adjustment.
And now think about things like healthcare appointments, government forms, social support, applications. So many of these systems are digital now. If you don't know how to navigate them or don't have internet access, you can get excluded from essential services really quickly.
True, and then people often become dependent on younger family members, which can help, of course, but it can also affect someone's independence and confidence in general.
Yeah, nobody likes feeling like they have to ask for help every single time they need to do something basic online.
Yeah, exactly. And something I kept thinking about while reading about this topic is how much society undervalues older people's lived experiences and knowledge.
Yeah, that's also very true. I mean, older generations, including older Roma, they carry so much cultural knowledge, history, and lived experience.
And also resilience. I mean, many have adapted to decades of social and economic changes throughout their lives.
But when conversations about technology happen, their perspectives are often completely missing. It's like technology is designed for people without actually speaking to them first.
Also, that's technically where exclusion starts. I mean, if nobody asks, what do older users actually need, then systems end up only working well for a very specific group of people.
Okay, but something we haven't really touched on yet is how digital inclusion connects to culture and identity.
Yeah, like the cultural aspect of this.
Yeah, that's a great point, and it's also really important. Digital inclusion isn't only about access to services or technology, it also connects to digital humanities, meaning how we use digital tools to understand, preserve, and share human culture, history, and identity. For Roma communities, this becomes especially important because digital tools can help preserve cultural heritage, things like oral histories, language, music, storytelling, and traditions that are often not formally documented.
You mean recording and sharing cultural knowledge digitally?
Yes, but it goes even deeper than that. Digital heritage preservation also helps strengthen group identity. When communities are able to document their own stories in digital spaces, they are not just preserving information, they are actively shaping how their identity is seen, remembered, and passed on. It allows younger generations to connect with their cultural roots in new ways, especially in a digital world where so much communication already happens online. For Roma communities, having access to cultural practices online can support the construction of group identity and promote participation in society and democratic life.
So wait, what you're actually saying is that if a community is digitally excluded, they're also kind of excluded from shaping how their own culture is preserved and how they can participate in the society.
Yeah, that's exactly it. And that's why this is not just a technical issue, it's also a cultural issue. It's about memory, identity, and who gets to represent their own history. Without digital inclusion, there's a risk that cultural narratives get lost or are only represented by outsiders instead of the communities themselves. So inclusion here also means cultural empowerment.
Honestly, I think this raises a really important question. Who is technology actually designed for?
I mean, most systems assume users already have digital skills, stable internet, smartphones, email addresses, bank accounts,
And confidence navigating online spaces. But millions of people don't have those things.
And when they struggle, society treats it like a personal failure instead of recognizing the structural problem.
So yeah, basically the system fails people and then people get blamed for failing within the system.
That's such an important point. And this creates a cycle where marginalized groups are excluded from decision-making, systems don't meet their needs, and then their exclusion gets normalized. So what actually needs to change? Because digital inclusion is obviously about more than just handing someone a smartphone.
Definitely. I mean, training matters, but accessibility matters too. Technology should be simple, clear, and designed for different kinds of users.
And also, the support needs to exist long term, not just one workshop and then people are expected to suddenly manage everything online forever.
People do need ongoing support, accessible education, affordable internet access, and systems designed with inclusion in mind from the beginning.
But going back to our topic, more importantly, older adults and Roma communities should actually be included in policymaking and design processes, so not just treated as an afterthought when it comes to digital space.
Specifically, in Croatia, where our organization is based, reports have shown that Roma communities continue to face barriers related to digital access, education, and social inclusion.
Older Roma individuals are especially affected because they experience overlapping forms of exclusion connected to both ethnicity and age.
Which is why this conversation matters so much. Digital inequality isn't just about technology, it's also about human rights, participation, and social equality.
And while these challenges are clearly visible in Croatia, there are also ongoing efforts across Europe trying to address digital exclusion in Roma communities. In fact, there have been some really positive projects working to manage these issues. One example is the Digital Inclusion for Roma Adults project. It involved organizations from several countries, including Italy, Finland, Serbia, and North Macedonia. The project focused on digital education for Roma adults and training Roma educators themselves.
That is a really interesting initiative because it shows that when people are given proper access and support, engagement with technology increases.
Yeah, and it challenges this harmful stereotype that marginalized communities are somehow not interested in technology.
We see the issue usually isn't interest, it's access. And the DIRA project is just one example. There are several other initiatives across Europe working on Roma inclusion, especially in education, participation, and digital access.
Right. It's important to show that this isn't an isolated effort. There's a wider network of projects and policies happening at the EU and Council of Europe level too.
For example, there's the European Roma Institute for Arts and Culture, which focuses on strengthening Roma identity through arts, culture, and storytelling. While it's not strictly a digital training project, it plays a big role in how Roma narratives are represented in public and digital spaces.
And that connects back to what we said earlier about who gets to tell their own story online.
Yeah, totally. Another important initiative is the ROMACT program, a joint program by the Council of Europe and the European Commission. It works directly with local authorities to improve Roma inclusion at the community level, including access to services and participation in decision-making.
So that's more like working with institutions to make systems more inclusive, rather than just training individuals.
Pretty much. And there's also the ROMED program, which focuses on training Roma mediators. These mediators often act as a bridge between Roma communities and public institutions, helping to improve communication, trust, and access to services. But it's important to remember that mediators can be helpful to an extent, but they shouldn't be a long-term solution, as the system creates a cycle which makes integration more difficult.
That actually sounds really important, especially when systems are complicated or not very accessible.
Definitely. And on a broader EU level, the European Commission has the EU Roma Strategic Framework for Equality, Inclusion, and Participation, which sets long-term goals for improving education, employment, healthcare, housing, and digital inclusion for Roma communities across Europe.
Okay, got it. So there is a policy framework. But the real challenge is making sure it actually works in reality.
Yes, and implementation is always the key issue, and that's why local and grassroots projects matter so much. They translate these big strategies into real support for people. Because as society becomes more digital, the question isn't whether technology will shape our future, because it already does. The real question is whether that future will include everyone equally.
Meaningful inclusion means more than internet connections or devices.
It means dignity, participation, accessibility, and being heard.
So, to sum it up, technology should work for all people, not just the people it was originally designed for. Thanks for listening to today's episode about digital transitions and inclusion. We hope you enjoyed our talk. Until next time.